Big thanks go out to Tywa for supporting today's video via Patreon. The Gitrog Ravenous Ride versus Kenrith, Loot the Key to Everything, and Damia. Yeah, lack of ramp here. It's not the worst hand, but not really doing anything in the early game. Yeah, we could keep it, but I want to try and ramp into our Gitrog monster. And instantly punished, so we've got some ramp there, but just a one lander, so we're going to have to go down a card here. Do have some big creatures in that hand as well, which we also want to see. Okay, and into another one lander, so down a card again. Into what is effectively, actually that's a no lander even. And another no lander. Alright, how many of these cards do we actually get to keep though? 2. We put 4 back on top, so Galter, Alpha, and a Forest, and Cavern of Souls. So, basically starting with an empty hand, we'll have some mana though at least. This is a 3-card opening hand. 38 lands in the deck, by the way. Alright, another land for us, so we're definitely going to have enough for the Gitrog monster. Can't remember if I put the Surveil land in here, actually, I probably should have done. Yeah, Underground Mortuary, so we'll be able to fix the next draw, hopefully. There is a Soul Ring. Getting rid of a Soul Ring this early. Yeah, I think we do need to put that into the bin and actually get into some means of card draw. The one good thing about the Gitrog monster, or the Ravenous Tide, is that we've got half a chance of actually refilling our hand. Just need to get into a big creature if we can. If we come back from this, it'll be a Christmas miracle. Up against 3 blue players, and I did decide to get rid of the Cavern of Souls because we needed to keep the Ancient Tomb for the Cultivate. If I'd known that we were going to draw into a land off the top, then maybe would have kept the Cavern of Souls previously. Yet Nature's Law for the Loot player. Saw 3 visits over here as well, followed by more ramp in a Wayfarer's Bauble. Not something I often play in green decks personally. And the ramp continues, a Bloom Tender over here. Thanks to our Ancient Tomb, we are going to follow suit on our turn as well. So there is a Greater Good, another means of drawing some cards. So we're not out of this one yet, so we may well be able to go for our commander next turn. And if we don't get into a big creature in the meantime, then the turn after I can just get down Greater Good and await the board wipe. A Kodama's Reach for Damia. An island being played by Loot, so has all the colours available. And in comes the first commander of the game, followed by a Haywire Might, able to blow up a non-creature artifact or enchantment. And now seeing a Zerda over here, so the Bloom Tender going to tap for 3 mana, and does immediately. So now seeing Dryad of the Elysian Grove, going to fix the colours and get an extra land drop in potentially. Our opponent's going reasonably fast, so may run out of cards in hand. Put us in a similar scenario. Alright, the Great Henge we may be able to play next turn. Our opponents know about the Forest, so we'll throw that down, followed by a hasty Gitrog monster. And we obviously can't saddle the Gitrog monster here, but we do have haste, so let's swing down the middle. I don't want Damia holding up any interaction against us, although he probably will. A lot of Damia decks like to play at instant speed for obvious reasons, because they can refill their hand during every turn. So hopefully we'll be able to keep our commander in play until next turn, so that we can go for the Great Henge and the Greater Good and likely empty our hand. See if this is a board wipe from Damia. It's an Acquire, search an opponent's library for an artifact, put it onto the battlefield under your control, going after Kenrith with that. Went after a Chromatic Lantern to fix the colours here as well. Could have been a lot worse with an Acquire. Continuing to ramp with Sakura Tribelder, like I said, he doesn't mind emptying his hand here. Damia often ramps like crazy in the early game. So Loot, the key to everything, is going to trigger at the beginning of the turn. And exiling with that a Soul Ring and a Fertile Ground. So playing the Soul Ring with green mana, curiously. And the Fertile Ground goes onto the island. So able to make double blue if he needs. Wayward Sawtooth going to continue to make a bunch of mana, assuming he's got another land in hand. Apparently not, 3 cards left. Is able to crack the Wayfarer's Bauble, of course, and does have the City's Blessing, so this can block. And as punishment, we take 1 from the Haywire Might. Helm of the Host for the Kenrith player, able to copy creatures with this. Still has 3 mana on the Bloom Tender, 3 cards in hand. 3 cards in hand for the loot as well, although obviously built-in card advantage with that. Helm of the Host able to be equipped to the Bloom Tender, because the equip cost on this gets a discount from the Zerda. So getting a copy of Bloom Tender. So it's round to our turn again. We've managed to keep hold of our commander. And there we see a Balagad Recovery, probably good to keep hold of for if we lose the Great Henge or the Greater Good. Play a land, play the Great Henge for 3 mana. Priority is being held up by Kenrith. And that comes down thankfully, so we will grab the Greater Good. Tapping down the Great Henge, makes the Ancient Tomb not cost any life. Sakura Tribe Elder being cracked doesn't matter because Gitrog Monster has Trample, so even if they went for the block and crack with this, we'd still get through all the damage with Trample. So we are going to have to hold priority through most of the game now, so that we can respond to a Gitrog going down. Hopefully don't lose our commander here. They were going to do something with the Bloom Tender there, maybe has Generous Gift or Beast Within, something like that. So now we'll go in towards Damia for 6 points of commander damage. A Lightning Greaves now, and that is 5, 6, 7 mana. So can afford the Damia. So if Kenrith does have some removal, then it'll be soon time to use it. And there is the commander. And the equip with the Lightning Greaves, now is the time to use any removal, but apparently no one has any, so Damia hits play with protection. Loot triggering again at the beginning of the turn has creatures, artifacts, enchantments. So now sees Oracle of Muldaya, Rashmi, and Xenagos. Alright, and there we see a Decimate pointed at a Tricycle Land, Helm of the Host, Zerda, and our Greater Good. So do we just have to give up on our commander now? I think we do. That's really annoying, but I think we do. It's got haste at least, and we've got mana for now. So we will put our commander back in the command zone. I was going to say, you never know, we might draw into a board wipe, but yeah, there's Archfiend of Ifnir, Shakedown Heavy, which we do have to keep, I think. Black Market Connections. Okay, I think we discard Archfiend of Ifnir. Balagad Recovery against my better judgment. And let's keep hold of the Nykthos for later in the game. We'll get rid of the Swamp. Okay, yeah, I think that was worth doing. Just need to try and dodge the Haywire Might as well, going on our Great Henge. It's probably... I think I'd go for the Lightning Greaves over the Great Henge, to be honest, but argument to be made for both. Noteworthy there is an Alchemist's Refuge on a land here as well. Only 2 cards left in hand though. Xenagos being played and ticked up now for a mana into Oracle of Muldaya. And we see a Beanstalk Giant on top of the library. Well, the good cards continue. It's a Glenelendra Archmage over here. Still has access to that Bloom Tender, of course. Although the Zerda's gone down, so not tapping for quite as much mana. And a Survival of the Fittest. Yeah, I'll be amazed if we manage to do anything this game. Alright, let's see what we get here. A Skull Clamp. Yeah, could be good if we actually manage to stick our commander for any length of time. Make a land drop. Do we want to play Skull Clamp into a Haywire Might? We could encourage them to go after Skull Clamp instead of the Great Henge. Would we rather keep the mana? Could go for this and see what we can trip into, and then just plan on going Black Market Connections. I just don't imagine our commander's going to survive. Although we could go after Xenagos with our commander, make it unblockable with canopy cover. I mean, we'd have to dodge the Glenelendra Archmage as well. And they may well interfere. Yeah, you know what, I'm going to go for the Shakedown Heavy instead. And that enters, and we'll get a plus counter and draws a card. Gets us into a Nature's Claim, so that onto the Lightning Greaves isn't the worst. Might be able to do that during this turn cycle. Let's go for the Black Market Connections. The more enchantments and artifacts we get into play, the more difficult it is to select something with this. Let's go Skull Clamp as well. We'll be able to hold up the Nature's Claim. All of our non-creature permanents are allowed into play through the Glenelendra Archmage, so let's just leave it like that. So Damia, going to refill the hand at the beginning of the turn, has 3 cards in hand to start off with, and jumps up to 7 of course. A Rampant Growth for some more mana. Alright, a Sylvan Library after that, just to draw even more cards. So has gone down to 4 in hand. Actually, Sylvan Library doesn't work with Damia, does it? Yeah, that triggers during the draw step, and you skip your draw step with Damia. So we don't necessarily need to worry about that. Anyway, see what card is going to be on top of the library with loot, because some cards will be exiled here. Exiling a land. Beanstalk Giant we knew about. Omen Path Journey, I don't know of that one. Mina and Den. And on top is a Temur Ascendancy, so not revealing another land. This one is, when it enters the battlefield, search your library for 5 lands of different names, exile them. At the beginning of your end step, choose a card at random, exile with it, and put it onto the battlefield tapped. Alright, so it's kind of sorting you out with lands for the next few turns. And after the draw step, a Progenitor Mimic is on top. Does have a chance to shuffle with the Wayfarer's Bauble. Casting the Omen Path Journey after playing the land from exile. And we'll see which lands they exile with this, because it could be worth blowing this up so that they've exiled their best lands and don't end up getting them into play. They put Field of the Dead and Nykthos and cards like that under there. Gaia's Cradle. Alright, let's see. A Yavimaya, Frontier, Command Beacon, Kessig Wolfrun's really good. Path of Ancestry, so nothing too incredibly scary. Temur Ascendancy is really good. We see 3 visits on top now. And deciding to counter that with the Glenelendra Archmage. Then plussing with Xenagos for some more mana. And there is Etali Primal Conqueror. 1 card left in hand, but that was a hell of a one to have. So they know they've got a 3 visits on top. I don't think we know what's on top of anyone else's library. Might get some counter magic from Damia though. And there is a counter spell, means it's not going onto the Gitrog monster. Might be able to bait more counters out of this player's hand if we go after that Lightning Greaves with the Nature's Claim. Might also encourage them to be reactive towards us and blow up our Gitrog monster when they weren't looking to do it previously though, so it's difficult to know which way to go here. Could test our opponent for spot removal. If we get the Gitrog in first and then try and throw a Skull Clamp onto it, they might react to that so that we don't end up wasting the canopy cover. Anyway, Survival of the Fittest with the floating green mana. And there we see a Krenko Mob Boss being discarded. Obviously Survival of the Fittest is worth blowing up with a Nature's Claim as well. And Omen Path Journey triggers for the first time at the end step. Gets into the Yavimaya, which is great with our Ancient Tomb, as I always point out. So there's the first sliver, going to make the Bloom Tenders tap for 5, and yeah, if a board wipe occurs at some point, he's going to really be struggling on mana over here. Turn 6 and only has 4 lands, and only cascading into an Elvish Mystic. So making use of the 5 mana straight away, maybe going in for Kenrith here. And he does. Alright, so I want to try and bait out some counter magic here, so I'll go after the Lightning Greaves. Doesn't seem as though there's too much spot removal floating about here, but I do want to try and make sure that we land the Gitrog monster. Okay, and we'll assume that there's no counter magic in hand over there now. A Demolition Field, able to get rid of any of the problem lands over here, probably Kessig Wolfrun. And then with this, do we just take 6? I think we're fine to do that just this once. Alright, so we just clear another land off the top. Yeah, Devotion still isn't great. Let's try our Commander. And I decided to take the 2 life to Ancient Tomb so that we could have 2 mana for the canopy cover and keep hold of the treasure token. Not sure what we're going to draw here though, if it's relevant. Priority being held up all over the place still. Alright, gets us into a Filth, which we do want to discard once we've drawn a heap of cards. There's only swamps over here. No, that's a godless shrine, isn't it? So there's swamps on two sides of the field, making our commander unblockable. Go for canopy cover onto the Gitrog and pray that this lands. Damia still holding up priority. If canopy cover was countered, we'd still swing in at the Death Touch Damia anyway, I think. Just for the sake of trying to get more lands and card draw going. Although Glenalendra could still counter this. Okay, and they're discussing the Gitrog here, so looks as though they're quite worried about what we are doing. I'll go through the chat here and any of you can read it if you want to. Alright, so eventually that's let down. So in that case, yeah, we'll go for the forest, or actually demolition field's going to tap for a green as well, so I might as well get that down because it'll come into play untapped just in case that's relevant. Oh, and I've gone through to the beginning of combat. That's so annoying. Can we only saddle as a sorcery? It's not allowing me to saddle. Ugh. Yeah, I've just looked it up. Saddle can only be done as a sorcery. Ugh. We'll just take out the Xenagos then. Don't think there's any creatures with reach or flying here. No, so we'll do that, make use of ourselves. And I think I'll go for the Skull Clamp onto the Gitrog monster in this case. Should be refilling our hand here. That's really annoying. So managing to take out Xenagos, and we will... I think I'll put the Skull Clamp onto the commander because that's the most likely to go down here. Although our opponent shouldn't be able to target us. Might be a board wiping coming though. At least with steel. At least we've still got some decent blockers held up. A crop rotation from Damia, going to be able to get a land into play. And there is our beloved Field of the Dead. So, demolition field going to be targeted over there, I think. Followed by a mystical tutor. And searched out the bribery already? Or does he have that in hand from a previous turn? Yeah, looks like he's about to draw into bribery. Draws 6 cards at the beginning of the turn thanks to the commander. Plays a land into Field of the Dead straight away. Damir's Signet. The bribery pointed over at the Kenrith player. Able to steal a creature with that. Stealing away a Muldrotha, so allowing the bribery, curiously. So able to get the Lightning Greaves back straight away. Could counter that, but would have been better off to just counter the bribery, I think. Protecting Damia again. So over to Luke's turn again, 3 mana of any colour being held up over here. And this time we see a Spire Garden, Bergi, God of Storytelling, and we saw the 3 visits previously. On top is Doc, Urlock, and once again, after drawing into that, see Progenitor Mimic. 3 visits. And now seeing a Blasphemous Act on top might be the first board wipe we've seen this game. But if we hadn't got rid of the Xenagos, he would have had that in exile and been able to play it. I don't know if he would have played it or not, but might have postponed that for another turn, giving us a chance to actually do what we wanted to with Shakedown Heavy. So there is the last card from exile, Bergi. 2 cards in hand. And I'll put the Team of Players library over here, so it's not blocking up the board. Not swinging in, just passing the turnover. Like I said, does have 2 cards in hand and has the mana for the Alchemist's Refuge to do things at flash speed as well. And gets the Command Beacon into play this time from the enchantment. And Survival of the Fittest goes for another tutor, this time getting rid of Rin and Seri. So it's like it's a tribal deck. And that was a quick tutor, this time going after Gisela, the Broken Blade. Getting into that 5th land by turn 7. And a creature from graveyard into play from the commander, so Zerda the Dawnbreaker coming back in. And that's obviously going to discount Kenrith by 2. Still managed to keep hold of the Bloom Tender all this time. Tutoring with Survival of the Fittest again, discarding the Angel. So it's basically just using that as a means to cheat out and reanimate things. So he's trying to set up Brisella. Goes after Bruna into hand this time. Activating Survival of the Fittest again. And discarding the Brunner to do it. Now, Biomancer's familiar, making the activated abilities cost 2 less again, so this will be a single black if they get that Simic creature out. And there it is, so can afford to now pay a black and a black to make Priscilla. And they've got all the colours on their lands thanks to Dryad of the Elysian Grove. I think they can do this at instant speed though, so don't necessarily need to do it now, although it looks as though they are doing. So Brunner first, followed by Gisela. And these meld at the end of the turn, I think. Yeah, at the beginning of your end step. Funny that it has to be your end step. So the instant speed doesn't necessarily help there unless you want to do it at the end of the team of players' turn. But yeah, with that being so difficult to set up, you'd just think it was the end of the next end step. But it does have to be yours. And does still have the blue mana from Bloom Tender for the Glenelendra Archmage, which we do have to be wary of. But here we see the Gisela trigger going on the stack. And Damia, holding up priority, goes for a reality shift onto the Brunner. And that's followed by a Fierce Guardianship, the last card in hand here, so the blue players throwing all their stuff at each other and ignoring us. Wow, followed by a Swan Song, okay. Could just counter the Swan Song with the Glenelendra Archmage. Not sure if my opponent's really concerned with much else now, with 0 cards in hand. Okay, allowing the counter to go through. Could counter the reality shift. Just allowing Brunner to be exiled for whatever reason. Maybe he wants to hold up Glenelendra Archmage to counter the Blasphemous Act that's incoming. Anyway, we get a turn here and we need to be careful with this saddle effect. 3 visits, a bit too late. Let's see here, I think we can forego a treasure and a creature. Let's just draw a card. Alright, and there is a Bane of Progress, which we've got a decent number of artifacts and enchantments in play. Don't have that many in the deck, but we can be very selective with a Bane of Progress. So let's activate Gitrog now. We'll go for the saddle onto the Shakedown Heavy. So successfully saddling this time. And let's put Skull Clamp over here. Devotion to green is 4 at the moment. Devotion to black is only 3. I don't know. Let's just tap down a forest for the re-equip on the Skull Clamp. Not sure if I'm going to want to cast spells after combat on the second main. I'm assuming that I'm going to, so just trying to be careful with mana. And probably hold up Demolition Field for the Field of the Dead as well. Let's go through to combat now that we've successfully saddled. Might be able to draw enough cards to discard the Filth at the end of the turn as well, making us unblockable to swamps. I'll go in at Damia. It's between Damia and the Teamer player really, but if we can get rid of the loot, then that's not as good. Whereas Damia is going to be very difficult to keep out of play, so let's do 7 commander damage over there. Noteworthy that Reality Shift could have gone onto this before we sacrificed it to Gitrog Monster, so it's good that our opponent here has taken the heat for us. Alright, so damage is dealt. We've got our opponent up to 13, which means we don't get them with Commander next turn, unfortunately. But Gitrog is on the stack now that we've hit. Hopefully loot doesn't interfere. And we will sacrifice the creature that's saddled, which currently has 8 power. So we draw a bunch. There's a load of lands. Brass Knuckles is excellent. Get into some more big creatures as well, which we don't necessarily want to play into the Blasphemous Act. So do we just get all these lands down? Can keep hold of Beseiju. Yeah, let's just get them all in. No landfall at the moment, unfortunately, but we are showing off what you can do with this deck. We did have to mulligan down to 3, so I can't really complain that much. And then we'll draw to the Skull Clamp as well. Don't pay 2 because the lands come in tapped. No point paying 2 for the Shock Land. And we're at exactly 7 in hand, so the Skull Clamp drawing us does help. Alright, and we've got a Field of the Dead of our own. Don't think we've made a land drop yet, have we? I didn't play one during the last turn, I don't think, or during the last phase. Yeah, so getting into Field of the Dead a little bit too late, but that's fine. Still get landfall from the Demolition Field. And if we're seeing a Blasphemous Act anyway, then all the zombies would have gone down regardless. So let's go for the Demolition Field. onto Field of the Dead over here. And then we can maybe go Bitter Triumph onto the Muldrotha as well. And each of us gets to search up a basic here. So I'll just go after a Swamp because we've got Yavimaya in play. Triggers Field again. Alright, now we can just hold the cards in hand so that we can discard Filth to hand size. We could cantrip with big creatures in order to just draw additional cards. I suppose that would be alright. So that's Bitter Triumph. I want to put Skull Clamp onto the Gitrog monster, so we'll do that now. And Bitter Triumph will have to go for that during the upkeep here for the Muldrotha, just in case. And Bitter Triumph, so that we don't go down a card. We'll have to do it during this upkeep and hope that they don't have a counterspell to protect Muldrotha. So yeah, we'll still have a big creature available to us in Phyrexian Soul Gorgeous, so let's go for a cantrip with the Lupine Prototype. And then we've still got 4 mana for the Boseiju and the Bitter Triumph this way. But it does enter with a plus counter, and we'll have us draw. Alright, and that gets us into a Greaves. Would we rather have Greaves in play than... Yeah, because I'm worried about this thing. So instead of discarding Filth, I'd rather just go Lightning Greaves here. Does mean that we can't hold up Boseiju if we want to go Bitter Triumph, but I'd rather just protect our commander at this point. The fact that it has haste is huge, but yeah, we're already pretty far behind our opponents. We're doing alright though, considering. So that enters and is successfully equipped, so now if they remove the canopy cover, we've at least got back up with the Lightning Greaves. And not discarding Filth anymore, like I said, but that's not the end of the world. Need to make sure to hold on the upkeep for this Bitter Triumph. Oh, actually, I forgot you can discard with this, can't you? Yeah, you can discard or pay 3 life, so we can just discard the Filth that way. Damia triggers, we will respond to the trigger so that they don't draw into some interaction for us. Point it at the Muldrotha. Discard the Filth, and hopefully that sees the back of the Field of the Dead for quite a while. Alright, so successfully taking down Muldrotha and handing it back over here. They do have means of reanimating it, of course, but I mean, they can reanimate all their stuff anyway, so I think Muldrotha is safer over there. Drawing back up to 7. And there, finally, is the board wipe. Been waiting on that for most of the game. I'm not sure if I would have played that. I might have encouraged the Blasphemous Act over here. We know that he's got Blasphemous Act, so maybe looks for a counter here. Maybe that's what he's thinking. If he can get the counter from the Archmage, then it means Blasphemous Act is free here. Looks like it's going to happen. So, plus counter on a target creature. And that will undo the Glenelendra Archmage. So, meaning it will come in with Persist once it counters this. So, a plus counter gets rid of a minus counter and vice versa. And Persist only cares about seeing minus counters. Then using excess mana to draw a card. So now we're gaining 2 life from the Haywire Might, and this has been sacrifice pointed at our Great Henge. Finally that goes down. Is that the right move here? Maybe Lightning Greaves or Skull Clamp might have been better. Survival of the Fittest, although they've got no cards in hand, but they're about to draw. Yeah, hard to argue against the Great Henge being blown up. At least we got to ramp before the board wipe, because we could have been punished here by not going for the saddle a turn sooner. Then a creature from the graveyard into play. Do they have a means of making mana? Because they're missing blue at the moment. Okay, targeted the Haywire Might there. Was looking over on his board to see what was what there. Then with the white mana gaining 5 life, the red mana can only give haste to everything, so I'm not sure that's of much use. It looks as though Damnation is finally resolving. So we get to draw 2 cards with the Skull Clamp. Our commander will certainly go back into the command zone. Haywire Might gains 2 life again. And Glenelendra Archmage comes back in with a minus counter, thanks to it having Persist. Alright, and finally getting into some Lands Matter stuff in Greensleeves and Nissa. Won't necessarily be able to make use of too much of the mana with Nissa, because I think this happens during combat, doesn't it? Yeah, it'll happen during the damage steps, so might be able to do some instants with Nissa. could get a little bit of card advantage here and there. Anyway, an Arcane Signet for the Sultai deck. And a huge Mana Gorger Hydra comes down as a 1-1, but it won't be that small for long. Followed by Exploration, 2 cards left in hand. Lightning Greaves has gone on to the Mana Gorger Hydra. And a Burgeoning, really trying to get as much mana as possible over there. This is the problem with Damia. You do want to ramp out like crazy and get down your commander fast, but at that point you might just be drawing into mana for the rest of the game. Not going to start his next turn with his commander in play either. And it's us, he's hitting for 3, encouraging us to take the Gitrog over here. But we won't be reactionary like that. We'll have a look at the board state when our turn begins, because hopefully I have access to Brass Knuckles, which might get countered by Glenelendra. And at the end of the turn, Loot is doing something. Activating Alchemist's Refuge, has 5 mana floating. And that is Oha Castlem. When it deals combat damage to a player, reveal that many cards off the top of your library. You may put a creature and or a land card onto the battlefield. So obviously we'll be able to swing in with that this turn. Got 1 card in hand, we know Blasphemous Act is there. Probably just replays his commander here. And there it is, putting another counter on the Hydra. Alright, the God is going into the right. And we'll be able to reveal a creature. I'm swayed towards swinging in over here next turn, but it does entail us getting into an Urborg. Because at the moment, our creature is going to be able to be blocked. Which you might not have enough toughness if we're lucky. Alright, gets into Atali Primal Storm, that's a good blocker. And a Scryland as well. And then Omen Path Journey continuing to get lands in. I think that was the Tri-land here. So just a couple of lands left. Path of Ancestry and Kessig Wolfrun. And the 1-1 turns in at Damia. Alright, so through to the end of Kenrith's turn. Only has 6 mana available. 1 card in hand. Could go Survival of the Fittest. Is holding Glenelendra Archmage over our heads at the moment. Okay, that is a World Shaper. I'm sure we've got a decent number of lands in the bin. Only 3, I think. Not sure how much mana we need here. Let's just go for 4 life, a creature and a treasure. Thinking if we're able to go double strike onto our commander, we can swing in at Atali. And if it doesn't block, then so be it. But if it does, then it goes down. If we get both the damage through, maybe we can sack this and the token? I don't know. Don't know how much mana we've got here. Play our commander. Yeah, so we're not going to have too much mana held up, unfortunately. See if Gitrog lands. And as much as I'd love to have this in play, we keep having to recast our commander, unfortunately. So Green Sleeves might have to wait until next turn. We'll have 3 mana left after we go for Phyrexian Soul Gorger, unless we want to play Boseiju. Let's play out the Soul Gorger. And I don't think we can crack this Polluted Delta either. We've got 2 basics and 2 Snow Swamps. And then 3 jewels, which we've got all of those, so we actually can't crack that, which I'm glad I just checked. Although we could crack it and then go World Shaper if we wanted to. So let's go Clamp onto this. Greaves onto the Gitrog, should have done that first really. Damia is holding up priority. That 1 card in hand, is it removal? Looks like it is. It's a Beast Within, so yeah, wasted the 1 mana on the Skull Clamp there. We can at least hold this back with the Phyrexian Soul Gorger though. Put that back in the command zone again, so it can be Greaves onto the Soul Gorger in that case. Okay, so just decided to play the Boseiju instead in order to get down some more landfall. I can play 1 more spell and this will then trade with the Phyrexian Soul Gorger. So we might as well just get another blocker into play with the 3 visits. Although they could buff up their own Soul Gorger, can't they? It counts on their spells as well. Yeah, we can always gang up on it if needs be. Okay, so didn't quite get us where I wanted us to be there, but we've accelerated our mana a little bit at least. Got the last bit of interaction out of our opponent's hand. Maybe if we'd not gone for the Lightning Greaves, they wouldn't have felt the need to go for Beast Within, but like I said, gets it out of the hand at least. A Seasons Past is return any number of cards with different mana values from graveyard to hand. And they don't target with that, we do just have to let them resolve it. It won't be easy to see what they've taken is the problem, because we're relying on the log from Magic Online. Oh, there we go, we can see him selecting now. Bribery, Field of the Dead, Mystical Tutor, Damnation and a Beast Within. Reality Shift, plays Field of the Dead straight away. And the Mana Gorger Hydra is a 10/10 trample now. Bribery pointed at loot this time. Grabs himself an Urabrask Heretic Praetor. Noteworthy that he did hold back his 11/11, which I was worried we were going to have to do a bunch of chump blocks to. The bauble finally being cracked. Urabrask triggers for the first time at the beginning of Loot's turn, as does Loot, the key to everything. Exiling off the top, an Eternal Witness, Possibility Storm, oh good, and Stolen Strategy, excellent. Playing a Wizard class after that, no max hand size and you can draw a couple of cards with it. Stolen Strategy after that, followed by E-Witness, able to grab something out of the bin here, of which he's got quite a selection. Not that Magic Online will let us look at it. Points E-Witness at the big Primal Conqueror, which he can afford here. So are we to assume he's not playing the Possibility Storm? Not much point in grabbing a Tali if you are going for Possibility Storm. Yeah, so does grab the Primal Conqueror. So that is our Shadow Spear, a Reclamation Sage, and an Arcane Adaptation that came from over here. And this will be buffed up to an 18/18. Naming Wombat with Arcane Adaptation. So now we have an army of Wombats. Reclamation Sage goes on to the Lightning Greaves over here, which I think is a good decision. And they can afford to equip the Shadow Spear for trample and lifelink. And the Shadow Spear goes on to the Oha Castlum, so +1/+1 buff and lifelink. Already had trample. And the fact that Kenrith is playing it out could be relevant to the outcome of the game, because it means that Oha Castlum can get a trigger, and so can a Tali. So appreciate him actually bothering to stick it out. Both those creatures turn into the right, and we get the other Atali triggering this time. So with that we see Urabrask, a Tireless Provisioner, and a Primal Amulet, making instants and sorceries cost 1 less. Again buffing up the Mana Gorger Hydra. So that is now a 21/21. So they both land, sending him down to 19, and the god will trigger, getting a land and a creature most likely. Must have blocked the Atali, which doesn't have trample. Yeah, argument to be made for putting the Shadow Spear onto this to give it trample, but the fairy blocked the dinosaur, so only taking 6. And there we see a Keeper of Secrets, and I think it must have been this command tower over here. So Loot is the one to look towards here, but I'm not confident that this Mana Gorger Hydra isn't going to come in towards us. And with all the removal that he's got in hand, I'm not confident he's going to let us land Lightning Greaves either. So maybe we just have to try and get down our commander and swing into the right. Oh, there's the Glenalendra Archmage. I thought he was tapped, so he didn't block with that at all. Round to Kenrith's turn now, and Urabrask Heretic Praetor is triggering again, recasting Kenrith. So 2 triggers for us. We exile the top card with Urabrask, and the Soul Gorger is going to make us sacrifice a zombie, I think. Could sacrifice something like the World Shaper with that as well, but hopefully it's not going to be in play next turn. I don't think. Gitrog, if we swing in over here, we might be able to land a hit with it. So we exile the top card. That's a Beast Within as well, so we can only play it this turn, I think. Don't even know how much my commander costs now. Do we make a treasure? I think we'll lose 3 life, treasure and a card draw. Try and make a land this turn. Alright, a Wooded Foothills means we can get landfall twice. Our commander is 11, meaning we've got 8 mana after we play the commander. So we can go for the green sleeves and our commander. That's probably the thing to do here. Losing a lot of life, but I'm not particularly worried about winning this one. I think we've done pretty well considering how powerful the game's been and how interactive it's been. And the fact that we mulliganed down to 3. I'm pretty happy with how the game's turned out for us. So another plus counter on the Mana Gorger Hydra. And then we'll try and dodge removal. We need to get down the green sleeves first. Might be that they leave us alone, especially if they can see the beast within as well. Play Wooded Foothills. That will trigger landfall for a couple of tokens. Field of the Dead token and a Badger token. So then we go saddle onto the Gitrog monster, tapping down the Phyrexian Soul Gorger. And obviously we could give this haste and swing a 16/16 over here, but we're forcing removal there, which it might be worth doing anyway. So let's just try and keep our stuff in play here. If they can use their spot removal over here instead of at us, then that's fine. So turning to the right, and it does have Swamp Walk still. So hopefully be able to hit. And this is why it makes such a huge difference that this player has stuck it out, even though he's not doing too well. Not after the board wipe anyway. So Gitrog lands, we do get to sacrifice the Phyrexian Soul Gorger. And the client's going really laggy, so it's going to be really easy to make a mistake here. There we go, it does get done. We've got a couple of lands, including a Cabal Coffers. No Urborg yet, though. Put all these in play. And then we're going to draw a couple to the Skull Clamp as well. So that is landfall. 3 zombies, 3 badgers. Alright, a Mithril Coat for our commander as well. Have to make sure it doesn't have Shroud with the Lightning Greaves, though. I think we just have to make use of this beast within, because I do not trust the 24/24. Although, can they get through us? I mean, we've got a 19/19 here alone. And we could always sacrifice the Rotting Regisaur next turn if we need to block with that. Go through to the main phase, see if our opponent does anything in response to a Lightning Greaves equip here. Priority still being held up over there. Okay, so with Shroud, the Malakiri Birth and the Mithril Coat aren't of much use anyway. Fire Shrieker is more double strike. If we can keep this big creature in play, then that would be useful. I'm wondering if keeping green sleeves in play is actually going to be more useful than the Gitrog now. Let's try and protect that. Alright, that is allowed on over there. And we've only got this turn to play the Beast Within. I mean, blowing this up just means that we're not pointing any removal over here. I think I'm going to go Mithril Coat onto this thing. And we'll leave things alone with the Beast Within. We need to start having people throw their bombs at each other. And if we go down, then so be it. I think we've still got basics left in the library, so I'll go for a forest. Hope we do anyway. Alright, yeah, we've got a couple of forests left after this. Need to try and remember that. Trigger for a couple more tokens. And pray that the client doesn't crash on us, because it's going really laggy now with all these permanents in play. The fact that we're tapping mana now might mean that because we don't have Beast Within held up anymore, our opponent will go for some spot removal. But we're forcing it out of his hand regardless. Could have gone for Mithril Coat at flash speed, I suppose, but yeah, whatever. Alright, and that is allowed on, so Lightning Greaves onto there, Indestructible Swamp Walk and Shroud. We've got the Exile effect still, so could go after it here, but deciding to allow it. So we're tapped out, we'll leave it there. Mystical Tutor, maybe just go for Cyclonic Rift after all that. It is a Rite of Replication, something a bit more fun at least. Let's get rid of some stuff here. Putting a Bane of Progress in the bin means that Kenrith might be able to reanimate it, but no accounting for what players are going to do in this game. Just hoping that the Mana Gorger Hydra can maybe get rid of a player here. Silver Library is now triggering thanks to Damia going down. So Rite of Replication going on to 5 copies of Atali Primal Conqueror. They'll only keep one of them, but they'll get the ETBs here. Fun game, this one. I haven't seen a complete game like this in a very long time. This should be the norm with Commander games. Unfortunately it isn't on Magic Online. So we see the 5 triggers on the stack from Atali, see how much good stuff he's going to get here. Can't really miss with that much, surely. Well, Chromatic Orrery, that's pretty damn good. Exiled our Urborg, unfortunately. It was the next card, so that Cabal Coffers is never going to be too good, and we can't get Swamp Walk over here now. A Tinkali Hunter. Cryptic Command can tap down an army and get through for lethal. An Invasion of Chandalar as well. I think that's our Invasion of Chandalar actually, so maybe the Urborg was exiled previously. Oh, it's tap all creatures your opponents control. I thought it was a target player, so they have gone for the taps and draw a card with Cryptic Command, so probably us going down to the Mana Gorger Hydra. With the Invasion, they are targeting Greaves, a land, and at Sakura Tribalkai they have to target permanents with that. And they'll be able to put haste onto Atali, Primal Sickness, Primal Conqueror. They could turn it into the Primal Sickness maybe for 9 mana. 4, 5, 6, 7. No, they can't quite afford it. Oh, actually, with Chromatic Orrery they can, so yeah, they could. I'd do infect damage over here with the Conqueror, and then take myself out with the Mana Gorger Hydra. And then this player with 0 cards, take him out whenever. Anyhow, an Invasion of Kaldheim, Growth Spiral, Cryptolith Rite, Sakura Tribalkai. So now with the battle entering play, they have to exile all the cards from their hand and draw that many, putting the battles into this player's control, so we'll assume that this player's going down this turn. Oh, you exile face up from hand as well. So they've drawn into Seasons Past again, apparently. There's Life from the Loam in hand, or used to be in hand, Hour of Promise, Damnation, Lightning Greaves, Sakura Tribalkai, Beast Within, and Reality Shift. Off the Atali, Felwar Stone, Mana Crypt, E-Witness, our Sheltering Ancient is a cheap 5/5 that we can sack to the Gitrog. And if this thing gets big enough, it's a 39/39, it'll be able to take 45 damage. And they won't need to flip this around. E-Witness is pointed at the Rite of Replication, so yeah, not an infinite, but you can make multiple copies of Eternal Witness, for instance, and then constantly grab your Rite of Replication back, along with a bunch of other things. Alright, finally seeing that Progenitor Mimic Kit play. Our Yargle and Multani. So, should be able to win here, I would think. Might need another means of haste. Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath, is a bunch more triggers. And then a Kindred Summons. Choose a creature type, reveal cards from the top of your library. Till you reveal X creature cards of the chosen type, they go into play. Alright, and a bunch of cards being revealed here from the Uro, I think it was. Or maybe it's from Atali itself, so I'll flick through these here, and if any of you want to get a rough idea of the deck list, then you can see what kind of cards we're dealing with here. What is that one? Commit to Memory, maybe? Yeah, Commit to Memory. And it's noteworthy that there are extra turns in the deck as well. There we see Beladros, Urtai can counter stuff, Lost and the Damned to make tokens, and the Mana Gorger Hydra is now big enough to take out loot. So they could put life into Beladros now and untap all their lands if they wanted to. Playing another land into Field of the Dead, I think it's a fetch as well. Flooded Strand. 8 cards in hand at the moment. Doesn't look like they have a means of haste. I thought they had a Lightning Greaves previously. Maybe it's... Oh, of course, it was exiled thanks to the battle, wasn't it? So they can play it this turn. Lightning Greaves from exile comes into play. Casting from exile triggers the Lost and the Damned, making a Spawn token. Don't think I've seen the Spawn tokens. There we are. Greaves went on to the 18/6 Yargle and Multani. Now a regrowth to return something else again. Targeting counterspell? Yeah, targeting a counterspell to try and make sure he wins this turn. 7 cards in hand, can still tap down and untap his lands. Seasons Past being cast again from exile. Alright, targeting a Bribery with the Seasons Past. What else? Just went with Regrowth and Bribery for that. So Bribery is pointed at the loot player and decided to grab himself a Maelstrom Wanderer, which does give everything haste. He doesn't get the Cascade, but he doesn't need it here, far from it. He's got haste on all of his creatures and is now able to finish it. Atali triggers when it swings, and that was a Sakashima, a Talisman, a land and a land. And then we finally take the damage. Anyway, that's the game, so hopefully you all enjoyed it. I'm, like I said before, very happy with that considering how far behind we were from turn 0, starting with 3 cards in hand, and look at the board state we've ended up with. Everyone getting taken out with an Alpha Strike, so no one was not playing for any point of the game. Yeah, really good game of Commander that, and it's been too long since we saw a game like that, so hopefully you all got some enjoyment from it. If you want to see more from the Gitrog monster, then let me know. And I do thank the patrons for their financial support of the channel as well. You can do that yourself via the link in the description below if you would like. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.